All right, guys, here we go. Another Q&A. If you have questions, there is a link right below this video that you can submit them. They go straight to me, and if they're good, I will use them. If they're not good, I will delete them. You can try again when you don't hear anything about it for a long time. Today we got Samantha who asks, do you prefer good mornings or RDLs as an accessory for posterior chain work, or do you have another preferred exercise? Just a quick kind of note on the whole posterior chain thing. This is kind of like people being super enamored with the lats, or there's some specific infatuation with some certain body part as if that's the absolute answer to everything. And I'm not saying, Samantha, this is you in this case, but it's a lot of you with the posterior chain, especially coming from kind of non-weightlifting sports. People are always taught posterior chain, hips, that's everything, and that's not true. There's an anterior chain too, and that plays a really big role in athletic movements, in particular weightlifting. Weightlifting is very, very quad dominant, quads and glutes more so than hamstrings in many cases, especially squatting. And don't get me wrong, I am not saying the posterior chain and the hamstrings are not important for weightlifting. I'm just saying you don't need to freak out about them and make them the absolute #1 priority in everything you do. So having said that, I use both RDLs and good mornings, and I use them for different reasons in different cases. So kind of the basic breakdown is that the good morning for me is a better way to really isolate back extension strength, isometric back extension strength, to be clear. And so what we're looking for there is, the reason I use a good morning primarily would be to get a lifter to be able to maintain a really strong, forceful, complete back arch during the pull, and to a lesser extent during the squat. This is someone whose back tends to be soft or changes position. You know, they lose some extension slightly, not necessarily completely, but there's change in the position during pulls, in particular off the floor. The good morning allows us to really isolate that back extension, and by putting the bar on the back of the neck versus hanging at the end of the arms, we have a longer lever arm, so we can get more work on the lower back, the entire back, with less weight, which means that we can kind of accomplish that goal of really strengthening the back arch with less systemically taxing work than, say, an RDL or a stiff-legged deadlift, as I usually call them, because you're using far less weight. You say maybe 20 to 40% of your best back squat in good mornings versus 40 to maybe even 70+% of your best back squat with a stiff-legged deadlift or an RDL. So there's a pretty big difference on how much work the body is doing in total. So if you have a lifter who has kind of a weak back arch, or not able to control it well, the good morning is a good choice, in particular if you have a lot of other heavy squatting and pulling work happening in a cycle, so that you can't just keep stacking more and more really taxing exercises on top of what they're already doing. And a note on that too, this applies to the stiff-legged deadlift and the RDL, in my opinion, for weightlifting. Don't use a belt. Such a huge purpose of these exercises is to strengthen the back. By wearing a belt, yes, you can use more more weight, which arguably means you're strengthening your hips and glutes and hamstrings more. But again, that's not the only thing we're trying to do here. Most specifically, I'm trying to strengthen the back. So by using a belt, you're kind of missing the point. The RDL or stiff-legged deadlift, you still have obviously a good opportunity to strengthen the back arch. However, it is tougher for most lifters to really forcefully arch the back when they're holding the bar in the arms like they are in a pull or in a RDL, compared to the good morning, where the bar is behind the neck and they can really kind of pull their shoulder blades back and feel that. But what you gain with a stiff-legged deadlift or an RDL, aside from heavier loading, if that's what you're looking for, is a couple things. Number one, it's really helpful to teach athletes to feel the balance over their feet and be able to control the balance over their foot while their shoulders are really far in front of the bar. One of the big mistakes that I see people making, and you could argue it's not a mistake because this is maybe how you want to do it for other activities other than weightlifting, is that when they're doing a good morning or an RDL, they're shifting way back on their heels so that the shoulders almost stay directly over the feet the whole time, even though the hips are hinging forward. And so if you're looking at, your upper back and your trunk and your legs, they're sitting back here, so it's like more of a scissor versus actually leaning over, which is what we're looking for, at least in my opinion, for weightlifting. Just like you would be in a pull. You can't pull by sitting your hips way back behind your feet. You've got to stay with the shoulders over the bar a little bit. You also, of course, along with that, are strengthening the ability to keep the bar right close to your legs while hinging with the shoulders in front of the bar. So that obviously applies very well to snatch and clean pulls coming off the floor, being able to maintain the position, the posture you want without that bar swinging out away from you and pulling you forward. So again, each is a really valuable exercise. Each has kind of a more appropriate application depending on what you're looking for at that time or with that given athlete. And there's absolutely no reason that you can't use both together in cycles. Pretty common for me to, put an RDL or stiff-legged deadlift on one day of the week and a good morning on another day of the week. And you can certainly kind of mix the goals of the two also. So maybe you're going to go really heavy on the RDL, stiff-legged deadlifts with kind of 3 to 5 reps. Good mornings, you're going to use kind of more similarly to how you would use a weighted back extension. So maybe you're going to do sets of 8 to 10, maybe even 12 if you're feeling a little crazy, with relatively lightweight, again, really focusing on the back arch strengthening and really forceful extension versus just loading the posterior chain.
Greg Everett with Catalyst Athletics here. Please subscribe, like, and share this video. If you have questions, post them in the comments. I answer all of them. Also check out catalystathletics.com for the biggest Olympic weightlifting exercise library out there, along with hundreds of free articles and videos and other resources for both athletes and coaches.